a card for the group to get started.
We want to introduce ourselves first.
Oh, sure. Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm Kalaway. I am nearing the end of my first year with the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. Dr. Soli is my advisor, and she was gracious enough to accompany me in this presentation today. So thank you so much, Dr. Soli.
Oh, it's fine. And you can call me Dr. Lori Soli. That's all right. Hi, everyone. I am Dr. Lori Soli. I am ending my 7th year with the Chicago School of Professional Psychology, and I am very excited to be doing this presentation. I've wanted to do something like this for such a long time, and so when Kalaway came to me with this idea, I was like, yes, let's do it. So very glad to see so many of you here and being with us with your time. We know you have choices in terms of where you are during these times, so we appreciate it. So if we were sitting around a room, we would probably start out by asking you what you would like to take away from this session. So since we aren't, and since our presentation is on the symbolism and use of the tarot deck, I'm actually going to ask you to think about what you would like from this session. Just think about it. I don't want you to put it in the chat pod. I don't want you to. Just think about it for a minute. And I actually have my tarot deck right here. And we are asking it together what we collectively and perhaps you individually may need or want from this presentation. So as we do that, okay, so here is the card that I drew based on my sense of the collective. It is the 2 of Fire, which is convergence. So my tarot deck is very different than Kalaway's, is very different than anyone else who may be here. So, and very different than, there's a multitude of decks. There is no single deck. So this is the one that I have. I've actually used this deck since 1992. And I just want you to kind of look at the card, get a sense of the card. We will bring this card back to you towards the end of the session. And at that point in time, I will be sharing with you the meaning, a very, very general short meaning of the card, and you can see how and if it applies to what you wanted. Take it away, Kalaway.
Thank you so much, Dr. Soli. That's amazing. All right, so just to orient everybody to what we're going to be talking about throughout the presentation, first off, thank you so much for being here. And so what we're going to dig into is, what is the tarot? The symbolism that's kind of laid into the tarot, why this would be appropriate to use in a psychotherapeutic setting. We're going to talk about how this empowers individual and collective realities, the flexibility and accessibility of this modality, and then of course, multicultural considerations that are going to be really important. And at the end, we're going to do a little demo, and then we'll come back to the collective card that Dr. Soli just pulled for us as well. Also, at the end of the session, I'll include the presentation and my personal notes because I go into quite a bit of detail. So we're going to skip through some of the slides just a little bit. I'm going to keep it a little bit light so that we can actually work with the modality. So just a heads up. So brief history, the tarot is a deck of cards. It's made of 78 cards. They're split into basically 2 different decks. 56 of those cards are called minor arcana cards. Arcana means key or secret. And then those kind of deal with more of like the interpersonal. They kind of color and illustrate the major themes of the collective unconscious that we see in the 22 cards of the major arcana. And the way that we generate meaning from using the tarot is interpreted through layouts and readings and archetypal meaning. Something that's kind of important to discuss as well. Nobody really knows where their derivations from. We do know that in France and Italy, we started seeing whole decks produced around the 15th century. And so these were created by cisgendered male, white male, westernized influence. And so the deck that we're using throughout this presentation is the Rider-Waite Pamela Coleman Smith deck. It's kind of made with this lineage. Dr. Soli's deck is a lot more diverse, and it just shows how things are evolving and how it's become a lot more inclusive. And so we'll kind of dig into that a little bit as well later down the line. All right, so basically the tarot is an invitation for and a facilitator of a lot of really awesome processes that are really important to the psychotherapeutic experience and relationship. And so they're kind of listed here, and I'm not going to go into all of them, even though I wish I could. But how meaning is made is through the layout, through the cards themselves, the approach or the question that you're coming to either the session or the tarot with, the orientation of time and space, so our sociocultural relevance in this immediate moment, and then of course you, the whole you, every part of your personality, of your attitude, of your belief system, of your experience is part of this process. And that's why it's super appropriate for psychotherapy. And then so in the therapeutic process, it can serve as a channel for clients to communicate and relay information back to the clinician that maybe they wouldn't have access to or wouldn't be comfortable doing in the first place. The clinician here is going to kind of serve as a narrator and a gentle kind of guide to help thread some of the themes that happen. And those themes are what's going to help create the therapeutic material. So here are just some of the basic themes. They're fantastical and all-encompassing themes of the major arcana. And so this is that 0 to 22 cards of that major arcana that I mentioned at the beginning. And the way that James described these are as presentations of psychic material that is transpersonal. So these affect everyone across all space, across all time, and they're basically the big secrets.
I just want to pause there for half a second. I know we have a lot to, we're doing a lot, but Kelly, could you just take it back to that last slide? For just
Absolutely, there you go.
Well, I would invite everyone as you look at these, sort of these themes that arrive, and think about, for those of you who are studying counseling, who are counselors already, who are counselor educators, and just for those of you who situate yourself within the human race, how many of these things are often some of the things that are difficult, challenging. A lot of these are the big existential questions that people grapple with on a daily basis. And so as counselors, we often encounter this material routinely as it is. And so as we move into talking more about how the tarot can interact with us as counselors, it's important to remember that we're already acting with the major themes from the decks on a day-to-day basis for the most part.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Soli. Perfectly said. It's so true. And I'm glad you brought us back to this page too, because as we work through this presentation, I've included several pictures of the tarot cards. And so as you're viewing them, I kind of want you to start letting that wheel turn and seeing the symbols that may resonate with you. If you want to be brave and share it in the chat, I'd love to hear all about it. So go right ahead, please. But yeah, so don't be shy, and yeah, get acquainted with these cards here. All right, so then kind of moving on, again, themes in the minor arcana. So this is going to be, again, more of that illustrative context. And so these are a little bit more limited in scope. They're going to feel a little bit more personal. And these are going to basically colorize our interactions, our life experiences, and kind of represent the people that we experience and encounter in our life. So yeah, several kind of, again, challenges arising in this space as well, and choices. All right, so I don't have time to dig into all the associations of the suits, but I've got this all here in a cumulative space for you. So when I do send out that presentation, if you want to really dig into this, I encourage you to do so. Just a little quick mention. So that the fire, air, water, earth, that's listed as the first kind of line here in terms of associations are elemental associations, and those are what we see in Dr. Soli's deck. So I just wanted to kind of organize that my deck, or the Rider-Waite Coleman-Smith deck that we're using, are expressed as wands, where it's cups, coins, or pentacles, just to orient everybody. Oh.
I am muted, but I wanted to hover there. I'm sorry, just for 1.5 more second.
No problem.
As we go down this, looking at sort of that intuition, thinking, feeling, and sensing, I think it's interesting to note the connections holistically back to Earth. Earth is that grounding. So that's in my deck, Earth it's that sensate, it's the soma, it's the body. So if we go down here, you'll see body and physical experiences. So again, it's like as we drill down through the long, the literally intrinsic and generational meaning of these cards, it's very, it's very archetypal. It's very persistent, and it goes back to, whether you say pentacles, you don't necessarily, when you say pentacles or coins, you don't necessarily think of earth or sensation or the body or the senses, and yet all of those things flow together. And so it's just another way to think of it as a whole from a different perceptive methodology.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. All right, so why is this important in psychotherapy? And so here I just kind of compiled some interventions and tests and modalities that are already in operation in our in this platform, in this area, in this domain of psychotherapy, which helps make and explain why tarot could be relevant and super beneficial, because it could be a complementary tool to work right alongside of these projective tools that we are already kind of using sometimes. And so it is deemed a little controversial, which I think is important to talk about. There's no standard process for administering, for recording, or for scoring the tarot. It's completely qualitative. It's all about the information that's shared. And so it still has just such depth, profound depth. It's very enriching to the therapeutic experience. And it kind of triangulates, right? With this gentle narration of the clinician, this holistic perspective of the client, and then this constellation that plays out in the cards. And so there's this really amazing relationship that forms. And something else that's really amazing is that there's a level of autonomy here. So once a client is familiar with this modality, or if they like already using the tarot and now they're bringing it to the psychotherapeutic relationship, they can do this work independently, not completely independently, but they can use it in their self-care. And so that is really awesome. And so why is it important? I think it mirrors the vast continuum of lived experiences, and it honors what is distinctly unique about us. And it considers our relationships, our worldview, the processes, our hopes and fears that we kind of experience. And it opens up exploration for new areas to explore. And I think that's really, really powerful. And I do want to make a note about the Hermit, just to kind of invite you all into how you might start thinking about the cards. And so I wrote a little blurb, and I'm just going to read it. So when I see this card, I think about the isolation that we've experienced as a result of the pandemic, right? This character is kind of in this winter, right? We endured this winter together, and that space might be desolate or infertile or lonely. And I pulled it so many times last year, it was crazy. I won't even tell you, but so what I like to think about though is we see, right, the light of this lantern that the Hermit is carrying. And so maybe this is an invitation to reflect inward and to see this small light within us, to reflect on our resiliency. Yeah, basically a star in the darkness. And so it's just an interesting way to start looking and using the tarot. That's kind of how I think about it.
And just to kind of add to that as well, like, so many times when we're in counseling, I've been a counselor educator since 2004 and a counselor since 94. And so many times it's like we're working with clients to help be their mirror, to get what they can't see more into their own scope of understanding. And as we sort of had presented before, this is another tool in this toolkit that we have at our access. And while it is not new, certainly back in 1994, I probably would have been reported as an ethics violation if I had brought this into my counseling office. So would I have had I tried to do yoga with my clients? So would I, if I would have tried to do many of the things that over time have become incorporated as more of an accepted and standardized practice as we moved from a completely quantitatively based with this sort of, yes, we're still science and art, but really with that understanding that there's a lot more that we can do to help facilitate change and to help bring the unconscious into consciousness, and that there's nothing religiously associated with this. It's not a, like yoga people used to think that was a religion. This is not a religion. And so, like, I think even freeing our own minds from the constructs and the constraints and the mythologies, which we'll go into in a little bit about mythologies, but like this is just another way to help our clients claim and maybe reclaim and look at their own reality in a way that they may not have thought of before.
Absolutely. And I think there's an urgency on behalf of clinicians to kind of familiarize ourselves with these modalities. Our clients are using these modalities. And so we should innovate, and start meeting them where they are truly, through the use of the tarot, for example. Awesome. All right. So yeah, Dr. Soli, give us some insight here on the ways that we can use the tarot in terms of an assessment tool, or a self-reflection tool, and enriching education.
And I was noting in the question in the chat pod as well, how is applying tarot cards in psychotherapy different than a tarot reading? I think, Kalaway, we have a slide addressing that.
Oh yeah, I'll get into that for sure.
Make sure.
Thank you so much.
No, it's okay. Totally fine. Don't hesitate to put questions up. Feel free to use the chat pod as a parking lot for us. We will make sure to monitor those. So right, in terms of using this within the counseling process. So, I mean, there's a lot of ways, and I guess it's different. Well, I'm not going to go into why it's different. I'm going to go into how it can be used. So in terms of assessment, each of us as counselors have our own assessment style. And that may depend on the kind of practice that we're in. Probably you're not going to be doing this if you are in a, if you have a set form in your office of how you do assessment, it may not be used there, but we also do ongoing assessment on a regular basis. And I think that this can certainly very easily be used as a qualitative tool to assess where a client is on a day-to-day basis. If this is a modality you happen to be comfortable with, I have not used this in my own, I have used it in some practices, but not in others. But I do have a deck that always lives, and it's not a tarot deck, it's called a universe deck, that lives in my office. And clients, when they come in, routinely pick a card, ask a question, pick a card, and then from there, we actually kind of use that as like as their temperature gauge. And so we talk about that. So again, it's that ability to be able to use it as a tool to get a sense of where a client is at a given point in time of their lives, because people see in this what they need to see, much like people bring up in counseling what they need to talk about. And so remembering, much like in counseling, like we're not pulling something out of thin air. It is coming from the client, whether that is verbal, nonverbal, energetic, body language, etc. So important to remember, this is, again, it's not like it's there, it's real. Self-reflection, obviously, the ability to be able to project, to look at something, to think about it, to apply it to self, is a form of self-reflection. We can use this as a form of journaling. Client may pull a card, their homework is to take a picture of it, take it, journal about it for the week, bring it back, talk to us about it next week. I think that it really is, and transparently, very transparently, the tarot has gotten me through some of the roughest days of my life, because I use it as a way to find insight, to challenge myself, to work through things in a way that I don't necessarily otherwise have access to. And so the capacity to be able to do that in an environment that is held, that is the temenos, that is our counseling space, provides just this other layer for clients of the capacity to be able to utilize a tool to do that introspection, to go into themselves in a way that, I mean, our clients determine how comfortable they are with that. Again, we are the guide alongside. We are not the one dragging the client into this. Education, I think it definitely can teach us a lot about our clients. I think it also can teach our clients a lot about us. And I'm a big fan of the collective, you know, energy exchange within the counseling session. It's one of the things that makes counseling work, when we have the empathy for our clients and our clients feel that there is temenos there that is inextricably linked to outcomes. And so that holistic dimension of being able to pull in their bodies, their minds, their hearts into this is just another way that we can use the tarot. And I think that, you know, because these are linked to elements of earth, air, water, fire, which link back to our, you know, our spirits, our intellects, our bodies.
What they're made of, yeah.
What they're made of, right?
Yeah.
So these literally cover all of those elements just right here. So whatever the client may need, they can find it here if they chose to. So that was probably a much too long of an answer.
Oh, no, beautiful.
It's longer and won't.
I love it. It's great. All right, so this next page is really rich. So we're not going to be able to get through all of this, and that is completely okay. I think some of the most important things in terms of fostering connections, these are kind of connections about our shadow sides, you know, like the reversal, the way that we are not able to see things, the way that our subconscious protects us from seeing this information. And so when these connections are able to come into our awareness, we're able to make changes that we want to see in our lives. Also during hardship, you know, this provides such an opportunity to make meaning out of that experience, out of loss, out of death, out of losing in general. Just an opportunity to really find meaning in those hard spaces. Something really important that Dr. Soli's also mentioned quite a bit already is it really can strengthen the therapeutic alliance, the therapeutic relationship. And this is so important. It's going to deepen the clinician's understanding of the client's worldview in a way that just, I'm not sure there's other tools that allow us this kind of access. And then one of my favorites, the provocation of synchronicity. This experience, if you've had it, I'm sure you've had, it happens all the time. It's this experiential moment of this external event, so the tarot cards. And what would happen is we project something. So when these tarot cards reflect our internal worlds, there's something really intimate that happens. It feels like the universe or the world is kind of happening just for you. And so this is where that feeling of surprise and magic kind of enters the tarot, is in this phenomenon of synchronicity. It's important to help with integration of that shadow. Maybe you've experienced this pattern of relationships, broken relationship after broken relationship, and you're thinking, what's wrong with everybody else? And you're not looking at maybe the thing in common is you, and so it's a way to gently, maybe not always gently, challenge kind of our role and responsibility as the player of our lives. And then in terms of autonomy, so something that is really special about the tarot is something can happen in the constellation, in the layout, and in the exchange of the cards between the clinician, the client, and the deck, that the client does not have to volunteer to the clinician. So they can keep this information really close and they can sit with it and divulge it in their own time or not at all. And so there's this level of happening and exchange and occurring and change that's going on while nothing is really even being said. And I think that's a really powerful element in terms of using the tarot. And then just reframing reality. Dr. Soli, did you want to elaborate on that a little bit for us?
Sure, I can. Yep, there we go. Okay, so I think that in terms of the reframing reality, one of the things that happens a lot is we get very, we're often our own worst enemies. I mean, I oftentimes am doing as much work with my students and with my students and and clients on you know, their own self-perceptions, their own perceptions of limitations, their own perfectionisms on learning those things. And so, and because this actually kind of goes back to the reversals that we mentioned just a minute ago. So what the, about the, when we are able to use these, we can look at things positioned from a different frame, because as we look and are reading about the meaning of a particular image as another author, and you can think of this even like if you look at bibliotherapy, right? So as we look at something and we read another person's perception of what something that we looked at is, it gives us a window on another opportunity of a different kind of constructural way of constructing our own reality. And it gives us options without being forced to. It's much like a wondering that we can give to ourselves through the process.
Yeah, consideration, absolutely. Yeah. Really great invitation. All right. And so we've kind of already addressed this quite a bit. So this experience of using the tarot is happening individually, but is also happening in this collective kind of space as well. And so individually, it offers growth. It can give our experiences meaning. It can help us reflect on the journey, which is like from the 0 of the Fool all the way through the 22 of the World, and then back again and through and over and over and over as we just encounter the ebbs and flows of life. And then like there's this global human experience in the major arcana that we all share. So Jung called this the collective unconscious. And as these themes are expressed in a tarot reading, we discover our individual access to them. And therefore we begin to affect, we begin to share, we begin to connect in this really reciprocal exchange between the individual and the collective, because we all belong to this human condition, you know, and this journey, our independent journey, influences and ties always universally back into this collective space. And so like in that experience of my experience with the hermit, for example, like I was experiencing this obviously on a really individual level, but it was also kind of a note on the entire state of the world. And I couldn't deny this connection, I guess, to that card and then my experience in it and of it. All right. And so tarot is great in the way that it's accessible. If you have the means, generally it's easy to obtain. It's an approachable modality if you just come to it with an open mind. And it's because it embraces the multiplicity of experience. And then it's really flexible because there's a wide range of application. There's so many layouts. There's so many decks that you can find. There's ones that are just like a deck that's made of all cats, you know? So if cats are your thing, you can use the tarot and the magician is a cat. It's amazing. And the meaning of the cards changes as we change. So it's very fluid, it's very dynamic, and all-encompassing, kind of at every and any moment. And it's easy to use. And so this is important because we are so isolated right now and separate. And so if these things can't be exchanged in person, we can use them over Zoom. We can use them over the phone. It's very, very flexible. Yeah. All right, so some things to be mindful of, multicultural considerations here. So in the tarot, there is a hierarchy that is depicted. And sometimes we may feel because of this hierarchy that we don't have access to maybe like the emperor per se, because I don't rule any land or anything like that, but that's a very limited view of the tarot. We all have access to these archetypes, to these energies, to these essences. They live within us because we are human. And so we have divine access to all of these archetypal essences. In terms of the gender binary, I wanted to bring this up like I said in the beginning of the presentation, this is lineage of the Rider-Waite deck is, you know, westernized, cisgendered, white male. But the tarot is neutral. It is fundamentally spectral in its approach. And I think it's just important when using the tarot in a psychotherapeutic setting to be mindful of language and pronoun use always. It's probably just good practice to use non-binary language when you're talking about the tarot, because these are essences. They're not people, you know, with these kinds of titles. And then so heteronormativity is also another really important thing to be mindful of. I thought it was really important to show the Lovers card here, because immediately somebody might not see themselves reflected in this card. And so I did want to show you a couple of different Lovers cards from different decks. So can you all see these cards? This is the Lovers from the Thoth deck. It's a little bit more diverse. This is the Lovers card from the Wild Unknown. There are no humans, just swans. And then the Lovers from the Fountain deck, for example, which you kind of get the sense of this. It's more about this energy. And so what I love about this card in general is it's really about love of self. What it shows, it's about relationships and partnerships of all kind. It's about vulnerability and connection. It's about intimacy. It's about this union of opposites. And I think that's really, really important. In the Rider-Waite deck, you've got these three characters here, which already goes beyond the binary. So I think it's really important that we start changing the way that we might perceive these cards out of like just a simple first glance. Yeah, and then obviously there's a really rich spiritual dimension to these cards. If that's kind of what you're looking for, but their applicability is not limited to just these small scopes that we might be kind of deferring to them as, if that makes sense. And it's oriented towards more feminist spirituality. So it's kind of starting to shed that patriarchal way of experiencing and inviting in this really nice fluid spectrum scope of being in the world, of loving in the world, of identifying and experiencing. Really beautiful. All right, and so here are just some additional benefits. I'm not going to get into this at all because we have laid it out. We're going to get into some of the additional considerations. I want to answer that question that was in the chat, which is really important. And so these are kind of additional considerations for clients. Why is it important for, or what is the difference between maybe a tarot reader and a psychotherapist using tarot? Is we are trained, we have a code of ethics, we are able to reflect on our identities, on our biases vis-a-vis our clients, and be responsible to make sure that those things don't impede the well-being of our clients. That's part of our program. That's part of what we do. Whereas a regular tarot reader, they may, you know, I'm not saying that they do, but they may project, they may kind of not be trained, I guess, enough to kind of be like client-centered, if that makes sense, all the way, and as responsive as we are as clinicians. And also in her research, Lavin discussed that clients usually come to tarot readers in moments of crisis and distress. And so if we were using this modality in this psychotherapeutic setting, not only are we going to be able to assess and help our clients in these, like when they might be presenting of something that is mentally unwell in a way that tarot readers might not be able to or not trained to do. I'm losing my train of thought. It's important. It's just important that, yeah, that I'm losing it.
I'm going to jump in. So
yeah, please.
So, you know, it's, I think that, you know, one of the primary differences, and please know, like, there's absolutely nothing wrong with someone going out and consulting a tarot reader any more than there is a psychic reader, or, you know, people have autonomy. They get to do whatever they want in their lives. And as a clinician, it's not my job to judge how they do that or what they do or how they do it or anything else. As a clinician, this provides us as clinicians, and this actually goes back to I'm going to address Colleen's question about the point of the presentation in just a few minutes. I'm actually going to ask you as the audience collectively to address that point. So, but I guess the point being that we have a multitude of opportunities to utilize this as an adjunctive way of reaching our clients, particularly as we talk about their own individual realities. We are also in a time and space in our world and in our nation where collectively we are experiencing a generational trauma. And to position ourselves as being able to have the capacity to act as a therapeutic mechanism via being a counselor, while also being comfortable to bring in a modality that may speak to our clients on a very deeply and personal level, and one in which they has been not accepted within the realm of this modality in the past, is another way for us to empower them, to embrace, to look at, to share in what is collective. The archetypes of the tarot are collective archetypes that span the world and potentially the universe, if you so believe. If a client brings that feeling into a session, if they bring that material into a session, if they see a tarot deck beside my universe deck, besides my other deck that I have in my office, and they're drawn to that, then I get to do that from the stance of being a counselor. What I would not do is cross the boundary of saying, I am going to read your tarot cards. That is not what I do. I am a counselor. Okay. If I do that, there is a boundary there, much like if I needed to refer someone to an eating disorder specialist, or if they felt they needed to go speak to, to spiritual counsel, that also would not be me. That would be someone else, and I would direct them to seek that in whatever way was appropriate for them. So I'm hopeful that that answered the question, that we kind of addressed the question that was answered there. While I'm hovering on this topic, I would really actually invite everyone to chime into, I guess, what do you see? What did you think, I guess, the point of this presentation was going to be, and are we missing it for you?
Love that. Thank you so much, Dr. Soli, for your support. And just one last kind of additional consideration are to be mindful of the triggering cards that are built into some of these decks. And so here are 4 examples. In my experience of using the tarot, I see people see these cards and it's like immediate reaction and fear. And the tarot is not meant to be fear-provoking or guilt or shame-inducing. It's not evil. And it's not fortune telling. So you get the death card doesn't mean you're gonna die, just very, very, to make that clear. It's, again, it's an archetypal energy. It's an archetypal information, as Dr. Soli mentioned, that we all have access to and that we work with and do experience at different points and in different ways in our individual experiences. All right.
My unmuting is not working well. I actually just wanted to before we do a little bit of a demo here. Ooh, we are about out of time. Very quickly, I wanted to bring it back to reversals. So oftentimes when people see like the death card, right? They think, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. Much like everything else that we're discovering, this is on a spectrum. So like there's a reversal of this. Maybe there is a symbolic death that needs to happen. Maybe there has a death been in the past that we still have not come to terms with that we need to look at. So when any particular card comes into your world, it just gives you an opportunity to look at it. The meaning that you ascribe to it, I'm saying you being if you were my client, or if I were doing this with a friend, or if I'm doing this myself, the meaning that I ascribe to it and the way that I dig into it is mine alone. Great. Let's do this, and then we're going to have about 10 minutes for discussion.
Perfect. All right, so I'm shuffling the deck over here. Dr. Soli, I am going to I'm going to spread these cards out, fan them out, and then I'm going to hover my hand over the top. And then you go ahead and tell me when to pick a card. And then this will be the card for your reading or for our discussion or in our session. And then, yeah, I just want you to focus towards a question or just the general approach that you want to bring to the cards today that we're going to work with. And maybe too, now would be a good time to jump out of this and to jump into a different camera view so that when I show you this card, you can really see. Sorry, folks. Go to speaker view. Can you all still see? Or what are you seeing?
I see you.
Okay.
I see you.
I feel seen. Okay. Okay. Just tell me when you're feeling ready.
Now.
Okay, so for this session, Dr. Soli has pulled the Page of Cups. As we briefly saw, maybe you didn't see, but in the suits, well, I won't get into it just yet. So Dr. Soli, Page of Cups. So what does this card evoke for you when you see this card? What do you see?
It's interesting because I guess what I see is sort of this this person presenting me with an opportunity. I also see a lot of red, which red and green, which evoke different emotions. It's interesting. Red usually evokes anger in me. Today it is not. It is coming more in tune with the question that I asked, which is coming from a loving place. So that's yeah, that's what I see. Just from the image alone.
Beautiful. So what kind of advice might this character here presented in the tarot do you feel like you might receive? If you could have a conversation, if you could speak to this character, to this archetype of the Page of Cups, what kind of information do you think they might give you?
They would probably say, notice where I am, notice where you are. While I have this gift for you, you also have the knowledge within. But the images of water are coming across very clearly to me, and one of the images that I've had lately is an image of that I would associate with surfing and surfboards. I think I think what the card is saying to me right now is just remember to remember what you know, and that all of these gifts like of fishes and things like that are there for you.
Yeah, and so I just kind of hear there's a little bit of this serenity kind of happening. It's a very kind of calm moment. Like you said, the red that you kind of evaluated and the color of the card might normally provoke kind of a sense of anger, but what you're feeling is this loving kind of hold and the complementary kind of emotional element of that water kind of holding and really prioritizing this moment for you and what's kind of being communicated in the card. And so just this moment I think of too of like trust. Water does invite us to kind of interact with and connect to our intuition, our emotional state, our relationships. And also you kind of see this maybe element of surprise and just integrating or being open to open like the water, you know, to these kind of elements of surprise that may be kind of on the horizon or working within, even inviting you back to that gentle space of like surfing, somewhere that brings you a lot of joy, a lot of happiness, maybe family connection and experience. And pages in this kind of hierarchical comment, is a youth. It's this very gentle, bright and young and motivated and inspired energy. And so, yeah, when I look at you, I mean, well, when I hear what you're saying, I feel like even like the surfing, the play, being in the water, playing, taking this moment, it's an acknowledgement of that, and of maybe community or communing over a loved exercise or sports, and even just kind of this nice complementary color that we see with this red and green you mentioned earlier. These things are about balance, they're opposite in this color spectrum as well. And so there's just a lot of kind of groundedness, even though we have a lot of movement with the water. So.
There was a question up here that that was asked. Would you ask the client what their question was, or perhaps let them tell you if they so chose? And I quickly answered that I would invite them to tell me if they wanted to.
Yeah, and it's completely up to the client, and that's what the beautiful thing about this is they're having this internal experience that I don't have access to as just somebody here kind of witnessing, right, or the clinician witnessing. But there's this dialogue that's happening between this image and the client. They can choose to invite me into that space or not, but there's still something happening, and I think that's really kind of the power of the tarot.
And what Kalaway was talking about was not, I mean, she wasn't interpreting anything of me. She was simply talking about the symbology of the images on the card. So there was nothing that she was, so when you think about it, this actually is a really good activity to show that like the clinician is the guide. And as she was saying, like, I gave her what I saw, and then as she fed back to me the symbology of the card, which because I use a very different deck than her, I didn't like, I mean, I have some knowledge of it, but not deeply, not like my own. And so it was like, oh, wow. Like it was very, because my questions surrounded staying on the path of choosing love. So it actually was, which, when you think about that sort of, even the page, like, there's that wellspring in our youth of like, we're so infused with that when we're young. And so it was very interesting.
Absolutely. Oh, thank you for sharing a little bit of insight about kind of what you're bringing to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm wondering if we want to go ahead, and we only have about 8 minutes left, to just go ahead and move into, I guess, into questions.
Yeah, please. And I do want to just mention one thing really quickly is we just pulled one card to keep it really brief, to just kind of to orient folks to how this might kind of come about. But the second you pull the second card, the third card, a constellation starts to form. So there's a relationship between the cards, and like even more information starts to evolve. And so I just wanted to say, like, this was a very focused scope, but it's so dimensional, and it can get a lot bigger really fast, even with the addition of just one card. So I just wanted to let everybody know that as well. And then,
and also I want to make sure that before we go, that I just give you, and let's have a discussion about like what you were hoping for from this. But I also wanted to just read. In my book, it's called The Divinatory Meaning of the Two of Fire Convergence. So I don't know if you want me to do that now. I would also really invite people to, if we wanted to stop sharing the screen, maybe if you want to come on camera. I don't know, I'm a big like look you in the eye kind of person.
I love it. I'm about it.
That is totally fine. Everybody can, and I'm going to switch my my view from speaker back to gallery so that I can see those of you. Hannah, Colleen.
Okay.
So wonderful to see you. So I'm just going to open it up. Like we've got a few minutes. Hey, Carrie, is anybody interested in I guess in sharing what you, I guess kind of what you went like, oh, I'd like to get this out of this, and how, I guess, how that happened or not. And then I do want to read this. I want to read this thing. Ah, fascinating.
Well, wait, I want to tell you what I saw really fast. Does anybody else want to tell us what they saw from Dr. Soli's card, the one she pulled at the beginning? Really fast. I mean, I saw two, like those stars. What are they, right at the top? And right away, I was thinking about me and you being here together. And then I was thinking about us and our audience, you know, and so just kind of this dynamics that started to occur. So that was just my first impression really quick. And I just wanted to share that. Anybody else feeling brave? Right, there's a lot of movement in this card, so maybe just kind of like expanding the mind space is something else I'm kind of seeing. What you got? Tell us what it says, Dr. Soli.
All right. So what this says is unfocused energy becomes clear and polarized. You feel now you have a strong direction. You are making changes spiritually, emotionally, intellectually, and physically. While you may go through various struggles, your courage in starting an enterprise at this time will eventually pay off. Maintain your own internal sense of balance as you begin your new activities.
Balance, right? Balance.
Balance, and just that term of convergence. I think that and if we think about that in terms of because this was positioned how to when the storm meets the dawn, that's the convergence, right?
Absolutely.
We're in this time and space of convergence globally as a nation, all of these really polarized things that are starting to come into a clearer focus. What that looks like yet, we don't know. And so we get to sit with that and find out. But also just during this age of COVID, the exercises that people have been having to put off, and eventually we get to converge again. We get to move forward again. And so there is this grace, I think, in that kind of even meets the spirit of the presentation itself. So.
Oh, thank you. Great interpretation. How can I add the presentation and the notes to this discussion chat?
I'm not honestly certain that we have the capacity. You can just add it in, but what I would say is if anyone would like it, please reach out to Kalaway or I. We're both at TCS. Mine is lsoli@chicagoschool.edu. We're happy to send you whatever we have.
Absolutely.
I believe that there's a list. If I ever get the list, we'll be happy just to send it out to you. Otherwise, don't hesitate to reach out. And if you ever want to talk about any of this, I'm certainly available. So thank you everyone so much for your time, for choosing to be here today. I'm so happy you attended.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I do have a little parting words I think I might like to share.
Yeah.
So this is by Liz Green, and this is from her book called Relating. And it says, most of all, we need the courage to experiment with new tools and to do so without prejudice. Tools which may help us live more meaningful lives and enjoy more meaningful relationships. The Prince's Quest contains many surprises, like the fish out of your cup. And one of the greatest is the realization that each of us is at once the prince, the dragon, the wicked stepmother, the helpful animal, and the beloved. And we are also the quest and the storyteller all at the same time. And so I think that's just the essence of what we're talking about here. Is be all of these things, you know. Mm-hmm. You have permission. You are.
Yes. As I have told many students, and I know for sure I have told Hannah this, our current behaviorally based interventions, our current things that we call researched and all of that, it had to be somebody's good idea at one point in time, and they had to believe and lean into using it and showing that it works. So
yeah, let's be brave, people.
Started to do that, so yay. All right, everyone, thank you so very much for being here. We appreciate all of you. And Josie, I'm trying to get your email off of here really quick. So, All right. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you so much for attending. And please do not hesitate to reach out to me. I love to talk about this stuff. So I'm always available. Just want to put that out there. Thank you all so much. Everybody take care and be well, okay?
Well.
Thank you.
Bye.